flames going, and
that was
he's marching to Mars,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think Gary was making the statement, I was in Van Halen, and now I'm doing some solo stuff, and am I really just shooting myself by taking this direction that I'm going in with this album that we'll talk about? But to me, I was just kind of like, I don't.
It was highly negative.
Yeah.
It was just highly negative. And this whole thing was a very artsy project that really blended rock with electronica. It was sort of a strange hybrid. However, when we saw this band live, it was much more rock-based than it was electronica, so which I preferred. And I thought it came off better than the album.
Yeah, no, you're right. It did rock more live than it did in the studio, because it's interesting because when you describe the band, you left off the keyboardists that were on the album. And for some reason, it alternates back and forth between two keyboardists. There's Steve Ferlazzo, who I think we saw live with the band.
Right.
And then there's also somebody else, Steve Catazzone, or Catazzoni. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But they have very strong influences on this album.
Heavily.
But they're not so unique that you're like, oh, there's two different keyboardists on this album, and it's like night and day, and you can spot it on the song right away. It's not like that. In fact, the album is, while it has different things going on here and there, it is remarkably consistent, which is interesting because it's done as a band project, Tribe of Judah. It's obviously Gary's album because he's the one on the cover. And while most of the people play as the core band, like I say, there's the keyboardists alternate back and forth, and there's some other players. So it's not really as bandy as you would think it would be, especially after, we saw them live and he had those people in the band, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's the band.
I found this live concert way different from the album. This was way more like a rockin' live band, like Extreme. So now, just to start off, I found a really interesting interview that our friend Martin Popoff did, Dave, with Gary at the time promoting Tribe of Judah. He asked him about the musical direction. He says, I was going to write the music and creatively go into an uninhibited lyric direction. It's not that Van Halen was restricting, but it was the entity itself, the preconception of what Van Halen should be. But with Tribe of Judah, I knew I wanted to write something as pure of heart as I could. There was only one prerequisite. I didn't want to join another three-piece rock band. He says it was a different canvas, and I wanted to do different things vocally on this album. So then when Martin kind of asked him about his freedom in Van Halen, this is what Gary had to say. He says, what was great about the Van Halen thing, which in hindsight probably led to why it wasn't a successful record, meaning Van Halen 3, was that Eddie and I really hit it off, and we didn't write a Van Halen record. It was just like when Sammy joined the band, it became a new Van Halen. When I joined, it became a new writing team, and I introduced him to a different lyric style. It was pure. The art was pure. But we ran into trouble when the record was done and it wasn't the Van Halen record everybody thought was going to happen. But I never got pressure from the guys. They treated me great. Now, when Martin asked him about the gun cover, this is what he had to say. He says, the gun on the cover, it's a provocative image. I guess I want the person seeing that image to be disturbed. Not for shock reasons, but to draw people into the lyrics and some of the themes that were going on, which are relativism, man being a measure, the moral relativism that each person displays in terms of right and wrong, and how we choose the paths we're on. So he's getting all deep on that. Now, when Martin...
Man, that all went over my head.
Now, I don't even know what the fuck he's talking. I feel like I'm in some college class that I shouldn't have been in.
You know what it is? When I listen to music, I tend to focus more on the music than the lyrics. Like, Gary Cherone would look at me and be like, you're not my kind of fan. Like, you're not paying close enough attention to the lyrics.
Yeah, but I also think he's like a fucking cheesecake, this guy. It's so rich, so deep, so thick. It's like, dude, come on, let up a little bit. Now, Martin went straight for it, and I have to say, in this interview, Martin did an excellent job. He got more out of Gary about the Van Halen situation than any other interview. We asked him about the breakup with Van Halen. This is what Gary had to say. He says, well, success would have caused the continuation, and he laughs. We started writing and trying to do the right thing, trying to make that right Van Halen record. The personalities got along, but add the pressure from the record company and the lack of success of the other record, and the writing was on the wall. I remember having conversations saying, hey, I can stay in the band, but you tour with Dave. Give the people what they want. And they were like, no fucking way. That was actually contemplated at one time. I wanted them to get the Dave thing out of their system because it would have been a massive tour and people would have loved it. How shocking is that? I have never heard that.
Wow, he's a good interviewer. I think
he did a good job. Then he says here, when he asked him about, the kind of the Van Halen record everybody wanted, he says, what is the Van Halen record everybody wanted? I said to Alex, doing the right Van Halen record is doing it with Dave, and that would have been a death blow to me. I couldn't win doing Van Halen 3. We wrote a few songs that could have been hits. They were somewhere in between the Sam and Dave thing, but it started to get a little dysfunctional over time. We parted fine. I really wish the Dave thing happened for them. I had an opportunity to meet Sam, and I wouldn't rule out Sammy getting back in there, which is so interesting because in 2002, another 2 years and Sammy's back doing a reunion in the band. So Gary's actually predicting it. In terms of the Van Halen 3 fallout, he says, I was kind of Eddie's new toy. Eddie was coming into himself as being a leader and in control and all that stuff. And that whole Ray Daniels thing is a mess. They fell out. And when you're not successful with a record, you start pointing fingers. And they never pointed the finger at me. We knew what we were getting into. We knew that the record was odd and that it was going to challenge that perception. But live, we did give the people what they wanted. We gave them the catalog of music. I had no problem singing the old stuff, and I think fans appreciated that. So I go away with a good feeling in that respect. Van Halen was a band that always danced on the edge of not really writing anything, and that record went over the edge, and it really had a lot of songs on it. I don't really listen to the record a lot. There were a bunch of seeds of some good songs, but we just didn't develop them. Some of it is really good, and some of it is glorified demo. I would have liked to have gotten a second shot, but I'm almost 3 years from it removed now, and the tribe is where I should be. Interesting, huh, Dave? I've never heard him talk that frankly about it.
Maybe our Canadian buddy got him on a good day.
Well, I think he gave him some truth serum or something like that.
I think so. He's the master interviewer.
And now to spin your head just a little bit more, just before we get into the album, when they asked him what exit Elvis means as a concept, hold on to your hat here. He says, the underlying theme of this record is relativism, the death of God, man's free will, and how it relates to art and the meaning of life. How we view our origins determines how we live our lives. I hope I'm not getting too abstract.
You can't even read that without laughing.
I can't. I tell you, it's so deep, and it's so thick, and it's so rich, and it's so layered. It's so intense, and oh my God, Gary, it's like somebody give this guy a bucket of popcorn. Please. It's heavy, and the album is, so we're going to get right into the album here. Dave, just to start off, what was your kind of overall impression of the album when you first heard it?
So it was different. It was, I don't know what you would call it. I don't know the right musical genre to describe it because I'm not a normal fan of the musical genre. It's industrial. I don't even know if that's the right word. It's not your typical guitar rock album.
No.
But having said that, I liked it. I liked it more than I thought I would. I listened to it quite a bit back in the day. In fact, I remember when the EP came out, you were the one who gave me a copy of the EP, and I was really excited. I loved the songs on the EP, and I'm like, I think this guy is onto something. Even though it's not my typical musical choice, I really like the album. Exceeded my expectations and better than average.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay,
for
cool.
Sure.
Now, the first song, Left for Dead, this could be a killer track. I love this song. This is left over from the post-Van Halen 3 sessions. This was supposed to be a track on that album. This is the one song that was definitely supposed to be on that post-Van Halen 3 album, and here's a clip. There's too many electronics on it, in my opinion, that's kind of mucking it up. The lyrics in the chorus are great and really, really strong. Many vocal effects and programming. I thought if Van Halen did this song, it could have really, really rocked. What do you think?
Yeah, and I always wonder and question about, like, how much of the song would have been a Van Halen song. Like, did Gary just take the lyrics and make maybe the vocal melody and then brought it into the band with a different musical backing? We'll never really know.
Yeah.
But when I hear the song, first of all, great album opener. I hear what you're saying about, like, all the electronic bits. And for me, like, sometimes, because I'm not a normal listener or fan of the genre, the songs kind of get samey to me.
Yeah, very much, yeah.
Because of that. Mm-hmm. But I will say that the album kicks off on the right foot with the song.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And, and the Left for Dead chorus is great. And it does make me wonder, like, I think if this was going to be on the second album that Gary had done with Van Halen, it could have been something, because I like this song a lot. But I will say, though, I don't think this is the only song that Gary took stuff from Van Halen when he left.
Really?
And we'll get into that in a little while.
Okay, so we're going to also note as we go through these songs which song was on the EP. So Left for Dead was on the EP. That's one of the songs that was on the EP. The second song, No One, that was not on the EP. This is on the album, and here's a clip. This has a lot of solid verses. I like this song as well. Vocal effect is sort of overused in the 90s with the kind of echoing on the kind of megaphone type of thing. I know he's going for high concept here, but there's so much layering. It's not really needed. It would be better if it had a bit of more of a raw sound. But there's some great guitar here, some really nice pieces, and the vocals are highly repetitive on the chorus when he's just screaming, I am no one, I am no one, I am no one. It's a little repetitive there, but it was good. It was good, though, for sure. Now, Dave, if I remember correctly, you're a fan of Waiting for the Punchline, right? The Extreme album?
Yes, I am.
Now, that album is tremendous.
In fact, that's the only Extreme album I own, believe it or not.
Okay. That's Extreme's fourth album, Waiting for the Punchline. Came out in 1995, so right in the middle of grunge. Really didn't get the proper attention. That album is tremendous. That is a fantastic record.
Yes, extremely underrated. I'm with you all the way on that one.
Totally. Love that album. And there are songs on here that have that vibe, because it's got that raw kind of feeling, but it's kind of overdone and layered and buried under a lot of electronica, for sure. What did you think of No One, Dave?
Well, before you get to No One, it's interesting you talk about Waiting for the Punchline, because I remember when we saw them live, they did some songs from Waiting for the Punchline.
Oh, absolutely.
They did like 2 or 3 songs.
A lot of it,
wow, these are pretty good. I'm going to go search for that album.
Because Mike Mangini was on that album, and so is Patrick. So most of the band was on that album, and that album wasn't that old at the time.
No, it was like a couple of years old or something.
Yeah, and it fit well with the Tribe of Judah material.
Yes, it did. Yeah. But going back to No One, you're right. It is a thick, layered song.
Yeah.
That's a lot